we deal with these different color combinations with something that we have codified in the early 20th century as harmonies. And I don't even think 100 years has gone by since we first started talking about these particular harmonies. That is not the way artists always worked before. But in the 20th century, we started realizing that we no longer relied on nature to give us our clues about what worked best in a composition. So we started creating these categories that we now, on hindsight, call harmonies. And the first one to talk about is monochrome harmony. And right away you might say, well, if monochrome harmony is what it sounds like, one color and just value differences, then what's this yellow moon or sun doing there? And it's probably a moon. I'm going to use that as an exception because I don't think it's that important. It is hard in the history of art, especially before the 20th century, to find a lot of monochrome harmonies like this that are really based on a color, because that wasn't seen to be a good use of color. So this is a forest fire, and it makes perfect sense for this to be as red as it is. This makes more sense. Now there is some yellow, there's some orange, and there are even touches of red in this. But this is close enough to a monochrome harmony. It does make our point. It is really a value-based composition. Not very complicated. There are no strong color relationships in it. The color is almost an overlay on top of the value composition. I have subtle color differences here. The dress this woman is wearing is just a little cooler than the divan that she is seated on. And again, because there's so much red in there, any red that might appear on her skin is barely perceptible. She looks very, very pale, which was something that would be desired in this case. But here, I do have only red as a color. Now, there are touches of green in here. There are touches of blue and blue-violet in here. They're very, very minor. The complexion is not entirely just red. But our dominant color is red, and almost anything that we would call a color is going to be a reddish color here. But in this case, as opposed to the other ones that I showed you, it is that red color is seen against a non-color, or a chromatic gray, a very soft color. This is pretty much a sketch. This is pretty much not meant to be a finished painting, I had the feeling, but meant to be a value-based sketch, and there is some color in it. But there's only one color. There are no color relationships, so it's not very complex. Monochrome harmony is very, very easy for us to take in. Now, in this case, we have one color, largely, but we have a wide range of value differences. We go from very light to very dark to dark medium to light medium. And we also have saturation differences because of the sunset here. So this is richer than what you see in most monochrome harmonies, and I think a very successful one too. Frederick Remington liked painting a lot of pictures in moonlight, and most of them tend to be sort of bluish. Now his version of moonlight, as you can tell here, is a spotlight version of moonlight. Moonlight is seen to be very bright from this point of view. And it's not the way you would always experience moonlight. But you know it's moonlight because you see the stars in the sky. What's so ironic about this is we know now in the early 21st century two things. One, that at night greens look brighter than any other colors. They don't look more green, they just look more light, because at night we can't really see colors very well. Our eyes don't have enough to work with to see color. And two, infrared goggles that we're used to seeing on news footage and things tend to show you green images, and this almost looks like an infrared goggle images, but made many, many years before we ever had such things as infrared goggles. Analogous harmony is our next step, and it is a little bit more complicated than monochrome harmony. It now allows us to have color relationships. Here we have a number of relationships between warm colors. So I've got a dark red, I've got a red orange, I've got a yellow orange, I've got this complexion, and I've got some yellow up in here. All of those colors are next to each other on a color wheel. They make sense together because they're neighbors. They share things. They're very easy for us to visually digest. A lot of the same is happening here. And this has a lot to do with just simply the nature of light in an interior. There's not a great deal I can say about this, but it's a very good example of a analogous harmony. There are reds, red oranges, and yellow oranges in here. The big deal in this composition actually is the saturation difference of our main figure seen against a desaturated background. This is an analogous harmony and an unusual one. This is probably not taking its cues from nature entirely. There's some fancifulness in here, but this is a violet. It's not a purple, by the way. Purple has more red in it than violet does. So this is a violet, this is a blue violet, and this has a lot of red violet in it. They're all nearby colors. This looks so cool that this winds up looking warm in this context, but if you put this in an orange context, it's going to look cool. This is analogous with one exception. This. The patina of this statue is actually the complement, the opposite of this red-orange color. And it tends to catch our eye right away. In fact, there's a good chance that when I showed this, when this image first appeared on the screen, that your eye went here first and then went here. I just showed you this before, but it's a very good example of an analogous harmony, as is this. Analogous harmonies help us a lot with atmosphere and mood, partly because in low light situations you're more aware of the nature of the light source. Which brings me to this idea of a subcategory of an analogous harmony. And that is when the light source dominates the local color. I've not gotten around to explaining local color, but that's what you think a color really is. A red apple is red, except in green light it's not red anymore, it's green. So the local color, the dominant thing that is filtering light here are the green leaves of the trees. So this is green, not just because the objects we're looking at are green, but because the light coming down into it is green too. The same thing is happening here. Dominance of hue is a way of creating an analogous harmony by looking through a filter or by lighting the scene with a filter. There are many ways of creating that kind of filter. This is skylight. Skylight is a blue light source. Although we're looking directly at a point in the sky where the sun is setting, the sky above this is a bluish light source, and therefore everything lit is going to be bluish. Some of the same is true in this Degas painting. Although this is done in a photographer's studio, I don't know what the lighting would have been like. Again, this is skylight. This is blue light from the sky that is our primary light source. There is no direct rays of the sun lighting anything here. This is an artificial light source, and it is stage lights coming from below, footlights, which weren't necessarily always green. But as you can see, the reason why these colors are the way they are is because everything's lit with a green light. Everything is lit with the amber glow of the yellow light from the stained glass window here. Candlelight is a very low energy light source that if you actually photographed it, you would realize is red, not yellow. But painters have tended to use it as a warm white light source. And we use it now a great deal for perspective, atmosphere, and mood in current late 20th century, early first 20th century images. This is an overcast sky. We rarely see this. I'm recording this in Southern California. We hardly ever see this condition here. But I've grown up in parts of the country where I do see the sky giving you this kind of color feel. This is also late afternoon light. This is light near the horizon, and it is not bright daylight. It is light near the horizon. You can tell here by looking at the shadow, which is nearly horizontal. And that means the atmosphere itself is the filter. The atmosphere does not let white light through. It doesn't let the blue parts through, so you get more warm light. This is warm, and this could be warm for a wide variety of reasons. One of the reasons this may look so warm is varnish. Varnish is a yellowish coating that is meant to protect the paint, and with age it gets more yellow. And sometimes painters have consciously painted brighter colors underneath, knowing that the yellow is going to be interfering with them later. Now, there are a lot of reasons why this painting looks the way it does, and I don't know the exact one. I can make a lot of guesses. It's a very yellow and red painting. I strongly suspect the painter did not want the painting to look like this right now. This could be because of varnish, emphasizing the warm colors in the painting. And you don't see any real blue anywhere, but you do see some violet, and violet does have red in it, so that can maybe be that reason. It could be that this is taken from a slide, and the slide emulsion on celluloid has simply yellowed with age. It was not kept very well. It got too warm, and the slide just turned out badly. It could be that it was not photographed well in the beginning. Or it could have been that he wanted this kind of atmospheric effect. We don't know that for sure. So I have the feeling, along the same lines, that this painter did not want this painting to look like this. I have the feeling that if you went to a museum, you would not see this painting looking like this. This is probably an inaccurate reproduction for a wide variety of reasons. Some of that is true here. There is a yellowness to this that may not have been the intention of the artist. I don't know that for sure, but there's a good chance that the artist actually wanted to see the sky and wanted a much more balanced view of color that was not dominated by warmth to that degree. I doubt very much if this painting was intended to look like this. In fact, I think that this is more based on bad reproduction than anything else, and this is how much we've been missing in this painting. Some of the same is true here, although this is even stronger because this was printed. Although this may have been a painting at first, that this reproduction was from a printed source. So when I do take away some of the yellowness of paper and some of the redness that may have come from the red inks being the strongest inks used, we get a very, very different picture here. And it is easy to believe that we are supposed to see this wide variety of color in these areas. This is overwhelmingly red. In fact, it is so red that the greens are really muddy and we don't really have a color. They're sort of olives instead of green. So if we take away some of that color cast, there's a good chance that it was intended to look like this. So I'm going to ask you to sort of abandon the idea of absolutes. That to ask which one is more accurate may not be a really completely fair question. We may not have a most accurate. That leads us to this problem. We are dealing with reproductions here. These are two different reproductions of the same painting, and they're very, very different from each other. So are these. I don't know why, and I don't know which one is more accurate, and I'd have to actually look at the painting itself. So we have to sort of find a place in the middle almost to be more accurate. Here is one version of this painting, and this is fairly well balanced and has a lot of blues in it. The blues are gone in this version, and you may notice it's also been cropped a bit differently too. It is the same painting. It is not a rough version and a final painting, because that can be a different problem altogether.